Stairs are a great opportunity for a dramatic statement in a project. They're often kind of custom built anyway because they are unique items that have to fit into a particular project site. And so they can really take your project to a whole new level. And of course, you do need to know the parts of a stair in order to draw one. Now, Revit automates many of these features, most of them, frankly, including things like treads, risers, ballusters, newel posts, all these things, nosings. These are all elements that are kind of ready-made in Revit. That has advantages and disadvantages, as we all know. Ready-made objects are so handy for quick production of some sort of item, but they also can make it hard to customize if you want to do something really cool. We also do have to comply with building codes. Again, my mission here is not to explain building codes in great detail, but you do have to, of course, adhere to the minimum tread depth and maximum riser height. And these, of course, I'm showing are in good old standard imperial measurements. Gosh, if we all went metric, it would be so much easier. But alas, we have all these funny measurements we have to deal with, which makes calculating stairs, you end up with some funky fractions. But again, Revit takes care of that for you. Some things that it does reluctantly take care of for you are things like minimum widths and rail extensions. Revit can do that, but it does take some massaging. So in non-residential stairs, which is what we're making here, you do have to be careful. Even things like handrails, of course, we can customize these, but they do have to comply with regulations. Even nosings, which are not required, but if you have them, and they are not a bad item for safety and also cleanliness, they have to comply with all sorts of regulations. So there's a lot of rules, including for the guardrails, which of course are also required anytime you have a stair height change greater than 27 inches, almost every time. So you do need to make sure that whatever custom design you make, that they comply with these rules. Finally, people love winding stairs. It's a long and winding path that we all follow, and there are regulations about those. And you sort of end up with a minimum interior radius of about 3 feet, I believe, for these to be code compliant. Obviously, in egress stairs, no winding stairs, but these are not egress stairs. These are just public stairs. And again, there's a lot of other specific rules which you should follow. So what's in the conditions right now? Well, it's a fairly typical rectilinear stair. It has tiles and an enclosed fascia. And there are a couple of landings here, which I think we could make a lot nicer. Maybe some generous landings where you can sit and hang out. It will require adjusting some of the walls in the corridors so that we can make some more space for ourselves. And as with any other stair, you do need to worry about the area underneath the stair, which does not have enough head clearance. And in this case, they've made a wonderfully inaccessible series of stepped landings with furniture. That would be really nice as well. And as we have probably seen in our lives, stairs come in many different flavors. You can see here this is a fairly traditional, somewhat rectilinear stair, but there's a nice fanning out of the bottom few rises. There's a small landing. And there's variations on these sorts of things. Again, a painted white riser. It's very nice, lovely trim. Here's a more minimalist type of look. These are all culled from the internet. So a number of varieties, and standard stairs, you know, Revit actually does a pretty good job, but as you get to more custom sorts of stairs, as the railings get more complicated, you see here these have like a funny circle motif, and then Revit starts to get really nervous. But Revit can do multi-story stairs as long as the floor-to-floor heights are the same. You can do a multi-story stair with just a few clicks as long as the first stair works. Highly complex stairs with all sorts of interesting finishes and things. These you really, it takes a lot of effort to get these to work. And sometimes a stair, like something which a very blocky design, you may do better just creating this out of masses rather than creating it using the stair tool. Some very simple sorts of things. There's not even a nosing on these stairs, and there's different kind of sides to this, you're probably better off doing massing. And then some stairs, again, like a helical kind of stair, we can do this in Revit, but things like creating the glass railings get to be a problem. Revit just does not like railings to be evenly spaced. It will space them evenly, but it will often leave gaps. And then once you get into super custom sorts of things, you're absolutely going to need to leave the sort of standard stair world and start considering making very custom types of objects. Even things like this, which are highly ornate, you may be able to find a manufacturer who has created these, or perhaps you go on to some websites like Turbo Squid or Form Fonts, and you can find custom elements that will work for you. Some of these are quite dramatic, and especially if they're in a historic interior, you're going to be able to find somebody who has put these things together. And even something like this, which appears to be fairly rectilinear, getting the vertical pieces, the essentially ballusters, to work, and irregular height, they're not following the stairs, or they're kind of following one step. You end up being very custom. And very custom, we can do that too. In Revit, there are some massing tools which will allow us to create these different shapes. And those sorts of things are actually a really great source for drama. Of course, having a slide or something like that in your stair may or not meet code, but that's okay. And then when you get to something like this, which is sort of highly sculptural, the stair part, of course, does still need to comply with building codes. You can't get away unless it's I don't know, even a tree house has to have a building permit probably if it's a permanent building structure. But these have to have stairs, treads, and risers which comply with all the rules. But perhaps some of these railings, this is probably something you're going to be creating using custom massing. And what a dramatic statement. Of course, you can't use these everywhere, but aesthetically, these are going to really make a powerful splash. So here's the existing conditions building that we created, along with a kind of selection of interior walls. There's an existing stair here right now that we are going to replace with a more dramatic stair. And the place to start is to hide all the stuff you don't want to see, create the atrium space using multi-height walls, and then any of the corridors which repeat on each level. Those will be walls which are just created on, say, level 1 and copied and pasted up to multiple levels. And here's the unhidden space here, or the floor plan hidden. And I've created openings in the corridors. And I also made a couple of sections just for quickly viewing the stair model. Finally, I did create a shaft opening. And this is a shaft that will cut through the entire building. Just make sure you give the top offset enough height so that it doesn't cut through the roof, because we don't want to do that. And drawing a standard stair in good old Revit is pretty easy. If you just click the stair tool, there are actually these ready-made stairs here, a angled stair or a U-shaped stair for the winders. I think I'm just going to draw a straight stair. Click on that. So here I am. I'm about to draw my run, but I really should check the properties of the stair first. This is typical Revit, but in particular stairs, they do not regenerate well if you start monkeying with the parameters after they're drawn. So let's take a look at this. First of all, it is going from the ground floor to the second floor. That's what we want. And you'll see here it will calculate the number of risers based on the calculation rules that are part of the properties of the stair, which we can edit, but let's not, because these are code compliant. And if I choose edit type, you'll see here, here are the calculation rules, the 7 inches maximum, 11 inches minimum on the tread, but also the width of the stair. And to be code compliant and frankly a little comfortable, let's change that in advance. And this will make it even as it draws all the way up. So hit apply, okay, we're back in the menu. When you start drawing, you will see that it starts figuring out how many risers you've created. I'm going to go with 12, which is halfway up. And then you can create the second half of the stairs here. Again, the run can go in any which direction, and you can see as I alter the run, it is sketching the landing based on whatever I'm doing here. But I'm just going to go all the way until it says 0 remaining. And there's my standard stair. It's even got some numbers indicating them. And I can monkey with it after. So if I have some particular dimension that I want, for example, I can fiddle with these quite easily. When you click the checkbox, it automatically generates the railings. Yay, what a perfect stair. Let's go take a look at this in our section view. And oh, that is a gorgeous stair. Of course, there's no landings up here on the second floor. We can create those using just floors. And if we want it to be a multi-level stair, which we do, you can just select the stair and choose select levels. And now all I have to do is tell it, oh, go up to the 3rd floor, click the checkbox, and there we go. We've got an instant multi-floor stair. It only works when the floor-to-floor heights are equal. And to edit it, remember that you do have to edit the 1st floor. That's the one that's getting repeated. I do like the look of that stair, but we actually can't dig into the properties when it's a multi-story stair. Revit doesn't really allow you to mess around with them while they're multi-story stair. So I think I'm just going to undo back until it was not a multi-level stair, and then we can look at it. So now we're back to normal, and another way you can look at the stair, this is one of my favorite ways, is to select the stair, and on the menu that pops up, there should be a selection box tool. So you click on the object, and what it will do is we'll create basically the default 3D view, which can go all the way up to the roof if you so desire. See how we can have that. And you can expand this to include the outer floor levels if you choose, or the walls. But this is a great way to kind of view your stair in isolation. Now, if you want to save this view, by the way, you can do that. This is a 3D view. It's actually the default 3D view down here in the menu, the Properties project browser. What you can do is duplicate this view and rename the copy. I'll just rename it to something that makes sense for me, such as Stair Axon, something like that. And anyway, that way you don't mess up the original 3D view. If I go back to the original 3D view, I can turn off the section box, and it's just our building as per usual. Okay, so here we are. We've got our lovely stair all on its own. Poor lonely stair. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the parameters of this stair. I'll just click on the run, not the railing, choose edit type, and you will see that this is a standard Revit stair like we saw. And let's see what happens when we change some of these features. So, for example, the stringers here, if I click on that, you will see that it shows me that I can choose what kind of stringer. So for example, if I choose none and apply, the stringer disappears. If I come back and I choose carriage open and apply, what you'll see is that it gives us a stringer, but the stringer kind of matches the rise and run. It kind of sits underneath the rail. So you can choose which one of those you want. I'm going to go back to the default stringer closed. And hit apply, and you'll see that it closes the stringer. Now, other things that you can do, this is very typical of Revit, is these stringers are based on profiles. So you can't just draw it, you actually have to have a profile. So to edit the profile, you just click here where, I did that a little quickly, click here where it says Write Support Type. Click the little 3 dots, and you will see that it has a number of materials. Right now, for whatever reason, it has the material sash applied to it. We can go, and if we have created a material, which guess what? I did for the stringer, I can apply the material here in this menu. And I had actually changed it at one point, but you can change the profile here. These are how you actually change it. I had created some custom shape here for my wall bases. The pretty standard one is a C-shaped section, so I'll choose that. And if you hit apply, you'll see that it should look like your standard C-shaped section. You can flip that. If I hit apply, the C faces in or out. More typically it faces in because that's how they weld this puppy together. You can also, if in this particular instance, because it's not going up underneath the stair but on the outside, you can change how high that stair profile goes. For example, if I hit apply, make it as -2. Whoops, I guess I can't make it -2. But let's say I make it 0 and apply. The profile moves up, so you get more of an outside piece here. Of course, that does get in the way of the railings, so maybe I don't want to do that. Let's put it back to 2.5 inches. And if I want it lower, I can make that, say, 7 inches and apply, and that will move the profile down lower. Again, probably a little too far. We do need to actually construct this by welding the pans onto it if it's that kind of stair. And this depth can vary based on the landing too. So often the landing, because of the larger span, is going to have a deeper structural element, but does not have to. You can change that right here. So, oh yes, I've changed the material, very good. And what if I want to change the material on the treads and risers? Again, you have to dig into the menu, which means you have to remember which one has it. In this case, it's the run type. I can come in here and change the riser and tread material. It is awfully handy if you've created these in advance and thought it through. But let's see, I think I do. Yes, I do have a riser material. And there we go. If I hit apply and OK and apply and OK, and now we're out of the menus, and you can see I have a very colorful stair. Let's make it realistic view. And now you've got yourself some nice materials. Now, speaking of other tweaking you can do, let's go back into the Run Type menu. And you'll see here that there are a couple of profiles associated with each of these elements, the tread and the nosing. Again, the tread profile, you can just choose a different one if you have created one, but the stair tread, you can see here, there's basically one. So we'll go with the, let's see, which one was it called? Stair tread. The other thing is the nosing. The same thing, there can be a special profile. In this case, it's called stair nosing. And if I go with, say, a radiused opening and hit apply, you should see the tread change. Again, it's all a little difficult to see as I have everything selected. So let's click off of it. And now you have a more rounded front. So each of these features can be changed, but you do have to remember which menu to go into to dig in and get the profiles and materials. So clearly there's a lot of parameters and that are involved in the stair. Sometimes it's easier to just go get one that's ready-made for you. Revit does have some ready-made stair samples and railing samples here. I just got these off of the Revit website. These are the stair samples. You can kind of zoom in and see that each of these has a lot of features, a lot of parameters that we just changed. The stringer in the middle in this one, open risers, which are not really legal for non-commercial use, but go tell that to the Apple Store, which is using glass stairs that have open risers. I don't know how they get away with it. But anyway, you can see here there's a number of different ones, including ones with a stringer on one side and a stringer on the other. And they don't appear to have any materials on them. But if you like one of these, you can just select it and go up to the Modify menu, and there should be a Copy to Clipboard button. And then if you go to our project, you do have to go to the floor plan view to paste these guys in. I'm just going to Control V, paste it right in, and it may have some features which are repeated. Oh, and look at that cute little stair. I'll click Finish. There's my stair type, and now that becomes available. I forget what type that was. It's a assembled stair, residential, closed 2 sides. So if I select this stair, assembled stair, residential closed 2 sides becomes one of the properties. You can also go, there are other places you can get stuff besides Revit's own little world. And like I mentioned, you can also import just the railing type. So for example, if you want a guardrail on your railing, handrail, I mean, just copy, select Control C to copy, or click the Copy to Clipboard button. And let's go back here, paste that guy in. And once again, place that, finish the paste, And this is a guardrail with pipe extensions. You can just delete it, which is fine. But now if I come in here and I select just the railing, I should be able to change that guardrail. Let's go to the 3D view. Oh, wrong 3D view. Let's go to the stair axon view. And now we have handrails on at least part of our project. What if you want a little bit more freedom making your stair? Well, you instead of using the standard run stair, we can absolutely use the create sketch tool. And what you can do here is click on that, and now we have three pieces you can create. There's the boundary for the stair, the risers, and then the path of the stair. So let's start with the boundary, and the boundary can be really anything. Here, I'll draw like a zigzag or something like that. And what you'll see how it says 0 risers created, 24 remaining, because I haven't drawn any risers yet. And these boundaries, you do have to have some kind of boundary on either side of the risers. These boundaries can be modified. They don't have to align with each other. Doesn't really matter. It's the orientation vis-a-vis the risers that's important. So for example, the risers, they can be straight lines. They actually don't have to follow any rules, so I don't have to comply with width or height or any of that kind of stuff. It will follow the calculation rules that we have set forth. But the spacing, well, I'm sketching them, so they can be anything. You see how it says 2 risers created, 22 remaining. I can come in here, if I add one, oops, I have to make sure I'm drawing a riser. If I add one at the front, for example, it should tell me, oh, yep, it's figured out that that was a third one. And of course, if you really don't want wacky doodle stairs, but just regular stairs, you can come in, draw a straight line. It does not have to go all the way to the boundaries. And then just use something like either copy or offset. So for example, this guy, I can copy maybe I'll use offset, and 1 foot is fine, and then I can just make my way down. I don't need to go and continue making the entire stair, but you can see here that you can pretty quickly generate an interesting stair. If I make a copy beyond the risers, it will give me an error message. I'm sorry, whoops. Also don't have any overlapping lines like that one. Whoopsie daisy. So just undo back, and so that you don't have that feature. And let's take a look at what we have done here. What have we done? You see how it will make the stair despite whatever you draw. And it will tell you there's an error with the baluster, because the baluster is absolutely going to be crazy in this one. Let's see how it goes it just doesn't know what to do. All right, so when you have a zigzag like that, you can see all sorts of features are getting kind of messed up. And those can actually be quite difficult to fix sometimes. Also, you see, because I'm using a tread family that doesn't support adjustable length, I'm going to have to change my family here. Let's see if we can choose one that's going to work better. Maybe not. And delete whatever it is that it wants to delete. See how now it's using a tread that will fill in. Oh, and actually the stringers work a little bit better. So anyway, sometimes you can get some real interesting effects here, and you can use the same techniques drawing a landing. Again, you can pick 2 runs if you do have 2 runs, or you can sketch the landing. The big thing is that whatever your sketch is, it has to touch the run that you want it to land at. But again, you can use any combination of lines, arcs, curves, zigzaggies, who cares? As long as you draw an entire boundary, it should create that landing. See how it does there, and it's actually added in the railing for us. And what does this look like? Well, it's a complete nightmare in terms of actual code compliance, but you can see that it makes an interesting shape for the landing. And by the way, Revit is smart enough that if you come in, and I'm still editing the stair here, I'm going to draw a boundary line for the top part of the stair. Again, this is just an experiment, so I don't really care kind of what it looks like. But if you choose the edge of the landing as your first riser on this kind of second run, Now it will not only create the second run of stairs, but it will also create these risers as expected. So typically your riser does go above. What do I? Oh, I have 3 remaining. All right, let's do the entire stair. 2, 0, 12 risers created, 0 remaining. I'm just going to stretch these boundaries out so that they complete it. But when I click the checkbox, you should see it is going to give you some error messages because that's a wacky stair. But you can see it's broken the railing. And now I'll click the checkbox and take a look at this kind of nightmare of a stair. And you can see that it absolutely is a nightmare of a stair. But obviously a custom outline like this would allow you to create, say, a flare at the bottom of a stair, or a slightly irregular edge, or a wider stair at the bottom. So you can obviously trace an image or a sketch if that's what you're starting with. And you can even add a custom landing to a standard stair. So here's my stair, and I could draw a nice big wide funky landing if I wanted to, or I could make something curvy at the edge. I could really have a good time with this one, especially if you want to create a statement, or you want to, I don't know what, have some kind of interesting overlook. I'll just have a little fun with it and create the landing and then finish the stair. And you can see it has created it. Let's go to the axonometric, and there it is. And of course, sometimes you're going to have weird things like this railing here that we don't want. You can edit the path of the railing and just delete the extra bits. If it goes up against the wall, you can also remove the railings at those points. And sometimes good railings just go bad. You just can't get them to attach. So one option is to sketch a new railing. What you can do, go to the railing tool and pick a new host and try this. Click on the stairs, and sometimes this will work when you have zigzaggy stairs where the railing just does not want to complete. And now here, let's go to the top view, and we can try, say, picking a line. Let's pick this curve and see if we can get it to attach. And I'll just click the checkbox, and sometimes this works great. Sometimes it draws it on the floor, and you have to select it after you've drawn it and try pick new host again. One rule of thumb, it does have to be inset a little bit. So if you choose the actual edge of the railing, of the landing, it may or may not work. So very tricky to get those railings to work just right. And we'll talk about that in a little while when we talk about custom railings. Circular stairs can be really interesting, although I know a lot of you go round and round about how much you like them. And they can be dizzying if you have too many of them. But anyway, there are basically 2 types of circular stairs that you can draw if you don't want to go full-on custom. The first one is a type of stair where you specify the start and end locations and the start location and the radius. And that will allow a stair to wind around on itself. Now, I don't really actually want that. I want just a kind of custom run stair. And this one, you specify the start and end, the center point and the radius. Now, in this case, I have drawn a couple of reference circles, and I have displayed the center point of those reference circles just to make my life a little easier. And the reason is you have to specify the start point of your stairs. You also have to specify the radius. So I'm not really sure where I'm heading with all this, but I think I'll create maybe the first half of the run, maybe a few more extra treads. Okay, there we go. Now maybe I want to sketch a landing. And like we did before, we can totally freehand sketch it. Here, let's see, I'll go with this and then this end, and maybe I'll draw another line coming out of the center point here, make myself a nice landing, but maybe I want the edge of this to be bulbous. Okay, I can draw a nice big arc here, make a kind of bubble shape just for the fun of it. And then I'll pick the edge here, the inner radius, so that I can kind of clean this puppy up. And I'm not really sure where I'm heading with all this as far as what this is going to look like. but I'm experimenting, and I think I have an extra line. So we'll click the checkbox. Now I have this second part of the stair. And finally, you do want to do your last run. I'm just going to do this one straight because it's going to get a little out of hand if I make everything so curvy. Okay, so I have kind of a bubbly stair and then a straight termination to it. And that is how you create a custom stair that is circular. And there it is in 3D. Like we've seen before, I've got a problem. I got a problem with this railing. It's not connecting. And I probably will have to redraw that last segment of the railing, but I'm not going to fix it right now. Anyway, circular stairs, super easy to create. And you can create landings that kind of match and create interesting little spaces on top of them. Creating a custom profile for some element of your project is not as hard as you'd think. So for example, if I wanted to create a custom profile for the stringer or for the stair riser or tread or nosing, it's actually pretty, well, sort of easy. Maybe not totally easy, but easy enough. And you just go and you have to create a new family. Okay, these are all families. And Revit does not really like you to mess with the default families. And those are typically rectangular anyway. So we go down to the profile families, and the generic topmost profile is the one that's going to work for things like stringers. You will notice that there are mullions, rails, reveals, nosings, stair nosings. Those are all things which obviously you can create, but let's go with just the default one here for now. And when you open it up, it basically puts you on the reference plane, and anything that you draw, you typically want to start at the intersection of that plane. That's usually kind of where it's referred to. So for example, let's say I want a really tall, maybe a 1 foot, stair stringer, but maybe I want to leave like a little, I don't know, lip for, I don't know, lighting or something like that. Maybe this is like some kind of custom soffity sort of thing. I absolutely could come in here and create just a totally custom profile. I could even leave a little slot for the light fixtures to go in. I'm just going to create something that looks like it's going to show up. And the big thing here is to make sure that it is a continuous loop. It doesn't really matter what the line type is, but this is how it will work. Oh, I think I'm off ever so slightly on my origin point here. And then you save it and load it into your project. And here in the project, I want to get the properties of my stair. And if you remember, this is where you can change the profile is in the type of stringer. And in that menu, you choose the profile. And with any luck, the Brody stringer will show up. You may have to flip it depending on which direction it's going. And apply and OK. And like magic, all of your stringers become this unique new shape. Do you like it or not? Obviously, this is a design tool, so if you're not sure, go and change it. So I've come and made a few changes to the profile that I drew. So I'll just load it back into the project and overwrite the existing one and its parameters. And probably you're going to see a very strange looking section. But again, the whole point of this is to be able to create something that is unique and custom to your project. And again, I can move it up and down using parameters, and I can go back and tweak that shape. And I can do the same for the nosing or other features. And this is absolutely a way that you could create some feature like a slide along the side of your stair. It would be a little tricky to control, but this is one way you could do it. So like stairs, they are related. Handrails are complicated, and usually most of the features you don't really draw. You just sketch the path, and Revit does the rest. It figures out the angles, makes the joins, the connections. It adds extensions and kind of handrails and guardrails and all that, ballusters and horizontal elements. So let's take a look at one of these. Maybe let's take a look at a simple one first. This is a handrail with just some supporting brackets. So I'll choose edit type and have the preview activated, right? And if you remember, previews you can have be in different views, elevation, or even 3D view, which is kind of handy. And the way it works, like with a stair, it's all happening in the properties. So if there are any ballusters, for example, their positions can be controlled parametrically here. So I'll change this to 4 inches and you'll see the brackets and, interesting enough, the end extensions move. Okay, so if we make this 0 and apply, now everything moves in the opposite direction. So we want to make this, I think it was -1 inch. Whoops, not 1 foot 1, -1. Okay, and get it back to where it was. And the reason just has to do with the way it's put together. Now, the rails, we have one rail apparently. So let's take a look at that. Choose edit. And what you'll see, yes, indeed, there is one rail. And its height is defined here, and the profile is defined here. And, you know, like we've seen, we can do custom profiles, although, frankly, with a handrail, it's not really the kind of thing that you'd want to mess around with too much, because you do actually want it to comply with building codes. But let's say I have, just to show you how it works, I can duplicate this rail and make another one at, say, 2 feet and hit apply, and you should see another rail show up below that first one. Now that's kind of a silly thing to do, so I'm going to undo back. Anyway, rails, rail structure defines all the horizontal elements. The vertical elements are ballusters. We choose edit baluster to see what they've got going on here in the ballusters, and there's one. And interesting enough, that one baluster, let's stretch this out a little bit, is the handrail bracket. The other thing to notice is that the base offset, it's a hosted element, so it just says, oh, wherever that host is. But the top offset is actually based on where on another railing. So we've already created a rail. If you don't have the rail, you can't use it as an offset. But if you have other rails, you absolutely could offset it from that. Or you could choose the host, and then it would give you a vertical offset. You'd have to make sure you place it at the right height. And railings do have calculation rules, but typically the segment, the center piece here, is going to be defined by the single segment rather than specific angles. Unless you can create railings that are things like landscape elements, which is actually a pretty cool way to make landscape walls that conform to the landscape. Is using a railing and a custom wall-shaped profile. But anyway, the start and end post here, let's click on those, and it will highlight it in the preview menu. Those are the extensions. Okay, so extensions are required by the building code. The only way to create them, interesting enough, is as a baluster. And we will see that there are other shapes for the handrail extensions, but this one is basically a return into the wall. And so is this one. And the starting and ending ones are a different dimension. That's why there's 2 different profiles here for those. And those, again, those are just 3D families that someone has created. The big difference here with railings is that they use 3D basically families rather than just a profile extruded along some sort of length. So if we select a more complicated type of railing, this is a guard rail, so it's at least 39 inches tall, and it does have a handrail in it, and it has extensions at the end. So this is going to be about as complicated as you're going to get. Choose edit type. Here's our beautiful, beautiful guardrail. And so the rail structure, these horizontal pieces, you can see here, I'll just click on them. You can see them defined. Each one is spaced a certain distance apart. Whether or not that actually complies with the 4-inch sphere, we could figure out. Let's see. Actually, I think it's a 5-inch sphere that fits. So we probably need another railing. But anyway, each of these, this is where you apply materials. It's inside this menu. And we'll just click OK. And with the balusters, well, now we have multiple balusters. We have the starting and ending post, like we saw before, and you see how it actually has a post and the return. So if you have a family with like a newel post, this is where those would occur. But then the middle one here, oh, that's the corner post. We don't see a corner in this particular view, but you can make that as a different post. Again, newel posts and those sorts of things can be quite complicated. And drawing these families is the same as drawing other types of families, same but also different. In that they can be more complicated geometrically, and there's a lot of parameters that have to be locked to different reference planes. Anyway, the baluster, this is the vertical piece here. The location of that baluster is based on where it is here in this pattern. The pattern is by default 4 feet wide. So if I put the baluster at 2 feet, it will be right in the middle. If I make it at 1 foot, it will, let me move that over. You can see it will move it to one end of the pattern or the other. Or if I make it 0, for example, apply, it will put it on the end. And now I'm going to start to see some repeats. Okay, so I have one in the end and one in the middle here. And if I duplicate this guy, I'll just select it and duplicate it. Here, let's put it back at 1 foot, and we'll put this one at 3 feet. And you should see multiple balusters coming in. So you can kind of get a custom pattern going here by adding in more balusters, just like the horizontal elements are created by multiple patterns. And again, I can change the profile in this particular location. However, the one thing I can't do in any of these menus, and I don't know why Revit does it this way, but I can't change the material of that baluster in this menu. Darn you, Revit. And this is typical balusters. The material is controlled inside the family instead of inside the railing menu. So how to find the family? Well, you have to go to your project browser, and the project browser, you can sort it by different types of things. So I'm going to click families, and if we go down in family, we should be able to find railings in here. It's not always logical. Sometimes it's under, there are other things like under stair parts, but anyway, here, I believe this is what we had, right? 1 inch. I can't double click on it to edit the actual family, but I can, if I double click on it, call up the properties of this particular baluster here. And this is where you change the material. So you can come in, thank goodness, and choose some other material. I'll just choose something so you can see what it looks like and apply, and look at that, it's changed its material. Obviously, I actually don't want to do that to the default family, but this is how you would change the baluster material in your project. The upshot of this is, let's say I want to create, I don't know, a really tall baluster here, I don't know, 10 feet tall or something funky like that. Right now, the baluster is limited by this top rail element. So I can also tell it, well, just make the top of the baluster as tall as I want. Let's make this 10 feet and apply. And I can even make the spacing a little tighter if I wanted something that's, I don't know, a little more dramatic. That would be pretty dramatic. Apply. That would be like a prison cell. Apply. Okay. Come on there, Revit. And then I could just remove the top rail, because see how it's kind of in the middle here. I'll just click the checkbox to remove it. Apply. And that's okay. And I think that might be okay. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. So now I just have a really tall railing, and you can create kind of a cagey effect here. So anyway, many options for creating custom railings. If your design ideas are a little more wacky, or you're just not able to manipulate the standard Revit elements to your liking, it's time to try some non-standard ways of making your stair. Now, what I've done here, I've actually selected the stair and hidden all the stringers and gotten rid of the railings, all that kind of thing, just by going in here, editing the type, and where it says supports, just changing that to none. And okay, so the stair is basically kind of a thin zigzag of stairs. And now I can add in, say, the enclosure that I'd like to have as a custom design element. And maybe one of the easiest ways to start with is just do a wall. And you can edit the wall type. Don't use one that's used somewhere else in the project. Duplicate it and make it custom. So I've got this custom wall type. And let's take a look at the structure here. If you look at that, the material's fine, maybe 6 inches is fine, but I can check this variable box. And what that does is it allows me to make a wall that maybe has some different thickness. Also, I think this one has some sweeps on it. I'm going to delete these, not duplicate, delete these sweeps here so that it's just a blank surface. And okay, and okay again. And now I'll just draw, let's just draw a straight wall. Maybe I'll go to the ground floor and go to the architecture tool, click wall. Maybe I'll just draw a wall right along this edge here. And these walls here, just grab it and slide it over a little bit. You can modify these walls like we've done probably a million times. You can stretch it up or down, right? You can control the length of it. If it's a flat wall, you can actually edit the profile. And this actually, you can come up with some really good customizations here. I can change the angle and make this really funky. And in fact, the advantage, now the top one wants me to remove the constraints. The advantage of doing it this way, on a flat wall anyway, is that you can really get an interesting shape pretty easily, right? And if I click off of that, that's an unusual wall shape. If I made the material of this wall, go back in here, edit type. If I made it, say, glass, then absolutely it would be an interesting effect. And I'll just make it glazing and apply and okay. And in that material, I could say add a profile or something like that, cutouts, all those sort of good things. Oh, I do still seem to have some kind of little wall base in there. We'll have to get rid of that. Okay, so that's great for a straight wall, but what about a curved wall? Well, this doesn't work with a curved wall. So you can see here, my curved wall is exciting in a lot of ways, but I can't edit the profile. It doesn't allow you to do it. You can create wall openings just by kind of drawing a rectangle on that wall, and it should create an opening inside it. Oop, maybe not, maybe not. Let's try it again. There we go. Okay, now when you draw the opening, we only need one. You can create these openings, and that's interesting enough. And you can do that in flat walls as well. But that is not really doing it for us. But one instance where this might be useful is if you select the wall, and let's start with a straight little section of wall here. You can actually, on the instance parameters, scroll down to where it says cross-section definition. You can actually make this, say, a tapered wall. And this allows you access to basically an extra set of grips here that allow you to make a wall that's kind of funky shaped. And that may be useful in certain circumstances. For instance, on this on this curved wall, I can make it have kind of like a monolithic look. It will respond to the openings here. I guess my section box is cutting it off. You could have some instances where that would be useful. Alternatively, let me undo back here. There are other instance override that you can do here is instead of tapered, you can make it a slanted wall. And when is this useful? Well, only under certain circumstances. Again, maybe it will be useful to have this angle, I don't know, 15 degrees around some element of your stair or, or any part of your project, really, depending on the type of look that you're creating. It obviously does take a little bit of effort to get things in the right position. And especially on certain parts of the wall, we can change it here in the properties. Getting the angle just right and getting it to match your wall is a little tricky when you edited the profile. So this is a fairly simple, but also not always the most valuable method of kind of creating new wall types. However, what it is really good for is if you have a railing that is all glass and you don't want any gaps, or you just want repeated gaps, you can absolutely do it this way. Okay, so maybe you want something a little more organic, a little more unusual shape, or maybe just completely wacky doodle. That's okay. But now it's probably a good idea to switch to a non-stair tool, switch to a mass. And basically there are a couple things about masses that are nice. In-place masses are what we're going to go with. One thing to be aware, Revit will override your view settings. So normally masses are not visible. If I choose show mass floors, this is what's going to happen when you create a mass. I think I'm actually just going to select all the mass floors and delete them because we don't need them anymore. And if there's any walls in the way, anything like that, we are in the middle of a model. So that's an advantage if you want to snap to some surface. But what I have done, again, hidden the rest of the model using the section plane. That's really helpful. You might want to go to your visibility and graphic overrides menu and make sure that masses are in fact turned on. And there are actually sub elements of masses here that you can turn on and off, just in case when you create it, you don't want it to disappear on you. So the simplest form of mass is just a surface. So let's say I want a surface to go along this side of the stairs. And I have exposed the floor here along with some of the reference lines that I created. And I can just choose in-place mass and OK. If it does get a little wacky in the way it displays, go to wireframe mode. Mine seems to be doing okay. But sometimes, again, masses can be tricky. And I'm going to just draw an arc here and extrude it. You select the object you just drew here on the floor and choose Create and Form. And like magic, you have a little form. Now, the beauty of this is I can stretch it by grabbing the top of it, but I can also grab points and stretch those, and a little gizmo appears that allows me to manipulate the edges of the form kind of a little bit more fun and interesting way. And so I can drag this up, and there you go. You've got yourself an interesting mass form. And one last thing you can do while you're here editing this form is you can actually select the form and you can give it a material right here. Now, I have created an interesting material that's a kind of mesh material. However, single surface forms don't always work great with these materials. They don't show up and they don't render particularly well. Some of our rendering engines have trouble with those transparent materials with cutouts. You can use them, but they won't always necessarily show up. So let me just choose a material that's a simple material and use that. And these single surfaces, again, in the rendering engine, we can make the material into, say, a mesh or any image, really. So if you had, I don't know, a cutout of your logo from your project, absolutely, or words, you can put that onto this single surface material. You could also make this a double wall material by just drawing the profile on the ground, but making it a closed loop, making it a double arc with ends on it. But this is fine for us for now. Now, what if I want to put a railing on it? Well, that's a little bit tougher. So railings, we'd want to draw one on the top of this surface, but it's really hard to tell Revit that's where you want to put one. What we need to do is first go to the ground floor and create some reference planes. And then we can draw on these reference planes. Now, reference planes here on the main architecture tab, you can pick a line, or you can just freehand draw it. I'll just pick the front of this first tread here, and I can give it a name, maybe number 1. And then maybe I'll do the same. I'll create 2 more for the middle and the top of my stair. And here I've done it. The top one is labeled number 3, and the middle one is number 2. So easy to keep track of. Now, if I go to the axon view of the stair, I should, with any luck, be able to draw these draw the railing where I want it in space on the arc. So I'm going to do another in-place mass. I could call it railing. But the big thing here, let me show the current work plane. I don't know where it is, but let's set the work plane. Oh, it's the ground floor. So let's choose reference plane number 1. You see how it highlights reference plane there vertically. And it's a little tricky. I could put it in this front view, but you can see it's not totally flat there, but we can get pretty close. And we could try drawing a circle for, say, the top of this wall. I'm going to make it big at first because it's really hard to draw. And now, let's say I want to create another circle. I just click the circle button. But up here, I can choose which reference plane it goes on. See how it's swapped? Now I'm halfway up. And in theory, anyway, I could draw this circle at the top of this wall. Again, it's a little tricky, so you may have to go to one of these orthographic views and try to find the midpoint of this circle. I think it was about 4 inches when I drew it, and I'm clearly very off. If you have trouble positioning it, you can, of course, select it and nudge it, but sometimes the directions can get a little confusing. Okay, I could also create a section drawing at each of the points where I have one of these reference planes, and then it makes it a lot easier to draw the circles in the right place. But if it's at the end here, the very top, you see how I can draw that pretty easily. So I've got 3 circles. Oh, this one looks a little low. Oh, and interesting enough, my arrows are kind of upside down on this one. I think I'm about right, but again, it's a little tricky, that middle one. Oh, and this one I think is a little bigger. Let's make it 4 inches. Okay. So now we have 3 circles in 3 different locations. Now all I have to do is select them and choose Create Form, and like magic, it will create a top rail for my wall. And so it's that simple. And again, I can go in here, change the material here. Let's get its properties and change its material to something a little more exciting. Let's change it to the stringer material, just because I have that one already made. And then finish the mass. And you can see it's off a little bit. I didn't get that circle quite right. But for modeling this in place, you can create some really interesting shapes very quickly. Now, you can actually use this mass in place feature in any number of ways to create some interesting forms. So, for example, I put in a couple of circles here on different reference planes. Here's my reference plane 3, here's my reference plane 2, and here's my reference plane 1. And mine is on a curve, which poses extra problems because these 3 objects, when you create a form, you don't want them to intersect. So if the object kind of folds over on itself, that's going to be a problem. Let's paint this, again, some kind of solid form. Here, let's paint it that same material so you can kind of see what it looks like. And we'll shade this guy. There you go. So obviously that's a solid form. We would need to make a void form to match that. So I'd have to go through the same process, draw the circles, or I could have gone back before combining these forms and use the offset tool to try to offset these guys. Oops, except I'm going the wrong way. Offset them, say, some small amount, maybe 2 inches. Oops, not 2 feet, 2 inches. And get a little extra offset. And then when I create that solid form, I do have to be a little more careful when I select. Hold down Control to select multiple objects. So now I can create my solid form. And then I go back, select these inner circles, and create my void form. Hopefully I'm getting the right ones. Create void form. Excuse me. And then use my cut tool, select the void, select the outer mass, and finish the volume. And once again, oh, we forgot to paint it. That's okay. We'll just paint it using the paint bucket this time. There we go. Oh, or maybe I did paint it and I didn't notice it. I don't know. So let's take a look here in realistic view, and you can see now you've got yourself a solid object. It does have a hole because it's running up against my section box, I think. And this is again the problem with doing this in the model is you do run into the need to hide the rest of the model. It makes it a little tricky. But you can see with some tweaking, I could probably make this a pretty nice kind of, I don't know, weird tube shape for my stairs. Now, if you want to make something completely organic, super irregular, it can be a little tedious to work inside the model, and that's when conceptual masses come to the rescue. And unfortunately, they're kind of a one-way street, so we need to get this stair into the conceptual mass environment just for reference, and you can do that by just exporting it as a CAD file. DWG is fine. And it does say you won't see masses when printing, even though mass is shown. So, don't worry. As long as you've used your visibility and graphic overrides, that mass should show up. And the preview will tell you what you're going to see. So save that onto your computer so that you can load it in. And then go to the File menu, choose New, Conceptual Mass. The conceptual massing environment is actually very similar to the regular Revit environment when you're making masses, in that there are a series of reference planes here, and it is quite large. So let's insert our Stair menu, Stair model here. Just go to Import CAD and wherever it is, Stair and AutoCAD, and actually let's use Manual Center when we place this, so that we know where the heck it is. And you can see we're dealing with a pretty large conceptual mass here. And that's because these are typically used for creating buildings. And this massing environment works in a very similar way. You draw profiles any which way you want. They can be completely enclosed, or they can be open like the ones we created already. So big picture, the conceptual massing environment, you can create really any sort of shape using these reference planes. I'm going to copy them using Control, and this is great if you're, I don't know, working on a roof. And each of these, you have kind of the freedom to draw easily. So for example, I don't know, let's say I was creating some kind of funky roof. I can set the reference plane to whichever one I want just by clicking on it, draw like a spline, all sorts of fun things, fun shapes. And I can also, just like we did in the other model, in the main model, we can choose which reference plane we're drawing on and just draw any sort of shape, really. And these sorts of shapes can be combined with multiple profiles, like we did before. Just select them and choose Create Form. And like magic, you end up with all sorts of wacky shapes. And like before, these shapes can be modified, usually a little bit by grabbing bits and pieces, ends, or entire surfaces if the surfaces are flat and selectable. But so pretty quickly you can generate some pretty interesting shapes. It will get out of hand if you modify these shapes too much and they kind of fold over on themselves. So that's kind of the big picture. But really, the best thing about conceptual masses is that you can draw things like spirals that are just super difficult to do otherwise. First of all, let's make the scale of this something that is gonna show our details here, and then I'm gonna draw a special kind of spline, a spline through points. And maybe I'll just click, I don't know, 3 or 4 points here on the circle that's below my what do you call it, my stair. So now I have this spline here. These little purple points, and you won't really see them unless you change that scale. That's why I did it. You can actually select these and move these. And this is kind of the same as we saw before, right? We can select these individual points. You can use a selection window if it's giving you a headache. And it is absolutely tricky to do this in 3D. Okay, it clearly is a little bit funky here. As you can see, I'm going to go to my top view. Oh yes, I accidentally moved it in the wrong dimension. So you can really get into trouble pretty quickly here. And let's see, I think my last point seems to also be off a little bit. So, and of course it's a spline, but this is a 3D spline. So what happens is that you can actually attach a profile to this spline. You can draw in any of those points. They are now reference planes. So let's say I set my reference plane, and I could choose the show button. I'll click on this reference plane. I'm now automatically drawing in this reference plane. And let's say I just want, oh, I don't know, a simple rectangle shape here. And here, let's make it a funhouse shape just because, you know, we have the option. If I select that shape and the curve that I just drew, let's see if we can get a view where we can do that, and I'll just use a selection window. It should create a form of that shape, right? And that is pretty cool. And if you wanted to, say, void out the middle, and I created a second profile here that's even more wacky than the first, you can do that. All you have to do, you use the first profile and your arc and create a solid form, but you can still use the same arc, or spline through points really, to create a void form which will automatically cut through your mass. And there you go. You've created yourself a very wacky and funhouse shape. And that wacky and funhouse shape, it's still editable. So you can absolutely, oh, except sometimes it doesn't allow you to make changes. Oops, and I'm changing past the edge of the void. So, you know, you can get into all sorts of trouble. But absolutely, you can create a really interesting shape here just by using the grips to edit it. Now, what if you wanted to just create a series of, I don't know, organic linguini type of shapes? Well, the linguini form is actually pretty straightforward. You just create a single shape at the end of the curve that we drew, the 3D spline. Choose Create Form, and there you go. You got yourself a form. And that form can be copied. Now, one thing that is always tricky is we are in 3D space here. So you make sure that you've set the reference plane to a vertical reference plane. And in fact, I'm just going to show that here. And now I can select this mass like we did before. Maybe I'll even put it in the back view so that I can get kind of a more orthographic view. And let's make a couple copies here. And we'll make a bunch of copies. Each one of these you can come in and, in theory anyway, you can edit it. But basically it's not easy to edit these. You can't get back to the original shapes without kind of undoing them, but I can come in here, select individual surfaces and modify them this way so I can get some variation. You know, maybe I'm want some overlap to get a little more of a tangled surface. It does require a bit of patience because each time you have to zoom in on the surface you want and hit Tab until you get the surface that you are hoping to manipulate. In this case, this one is being very recalcitrant, but we can follow there. I think I've got it. Maybe, yeah, there we go. And again, these shapes, the angles that you can move them at are going to be tied to how they were created. So sometimes they'll give you a little bit of trouble. Like you see how it just literally stops because that's the reference plane where that point was created. You can also draw drag individual lines. So if I want to create something, you know, maybe taller, thinner, more warpy, you can pretty quickly come up with a bunch of different shapes. You can also select a shape and add in profile. Sometimes this gives you a little greater control. You can come in and grab, say, a point on that object, get a little more funky warpiness. You can also add in an edge, and that edge can also be modified. Again, just make sure that you don't cross the rest of the object. If I drag it too far, it will give me an error message. We want to cancel that. Grab that same extra edge that I added, but drag it the other way, and you see how it creates kind of a wedge-shaped form. So pretty quickly we can create some very interesting geometry. And then if you're absolutely like, I want something similar, but not quite like what I've got, again, you can make a copy of these objects. I'll just, oh, I see we're off in a reference plane that's all wacky. Again, you do have to set that reference plane. It has to know where you're copying. And in this case, it just won't let me copy in that particular reference plane. So now we've got my object. What was I doing? Copying this object up. And lastly, you can dissolve this element here. We'll just select you have to have the whole element selected, and there's a dissolve feature. And what you end up with are a bunch of profiles and a bunch of dots and some lines. And then each of these profiles, you can come in and you can, manipulate it in some way. Here we go. We can come in and drag it. And you see how each of them is still tied to a particular reference plane. And now we can come back, select them, and create a form. And if it doesn't intersect with itself, you've got yourself a new piece of linguini. Lastly, don't forget the arrow keys. Mine are backwards, and it just happens to do with all the reference planes that you're using. Each of these masses can be cut with voids, and each of them can be assigned a material. Just select the object and change the material here in the materials library, or let's just select them all. And it's not a bad idea to create a new material for all these masses and just call it, underscore mass. That way, when you go into the main model, it's a little easier to find it. And I'm just going to give it a solid color for now. Oh yeah, and we don't want this stair in there. Maybe I'll leave it in there for now, just in case. Go to your Visibility and Graphic Overrides, VG. You'll see that there's a lot less in this menu than the main model. And just turn off your import and apply and OK. And that looks much better. And now we can save it and load it into our project. So here it is in my main model. I hid one of the sides with the vertical rails just to, I don't know, get an interesting contrast in materials. I think I'd probably do more of these because they're just too fun to do. Anyway, but I do have 2 stairs in here. Let me nudge this down. You'll see that there's actually a second stair. That's the stair that was my reference stair. We don't need to see that. And to hide that in the main model, just go to your Visibility and Graphic Overrides menu. It's an imported object. And you can hide both the floor plan and this object. And there you go. You've got yourself a nice stair. To edit it, just double click on it and you'll be back in editing mode and you can mess around with it, change the materials, etc., etc.